Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Gnoll in the Family event, in which the Bullygnoll was added to the game, and for once this is not a useless glory troop. So, over in the weekly event tab, we got this thing coming in with a bunch of mountain trade stones. It is an epic, so great time to go stock up on brown red if you need, as they come out to about 200 each, given that you get 2 in each pack rather than 1 in each pack for 300. So definitely a good time to stock up on those. Plus you'll be getting a good troop, because this is actually not useless for once, the glory troop that we have available. It deals damage with a 50% chance to hit the wrong enemy, and if it enemy uses red, it will end up doing the triple damage. It is the underneath the category of all the other Gnoll troops, and for that reason is pretty decent at countering out its anti-color. Of all the Gnolls, this is probably one of the weaker ones overall as far as its effects and everything. However, it's usable, of course, as a red Guild War counter, and it has another troop that can be used with it, one of the Guardian troops, the ones that came in through the epic ones, which has a nice Tauros synergy. So you can end up having 2 troops that both are unique, that you can set for Guild War Red Defend, that both have 2 times damage against red enemies on Skull. So they have a lot of potential when synergized together. It also ends up gaining, if it ends up getting a kill, additional attack that will probably bring it into one-shot range for killing the enemy if it wasn't already. Other than that, of course, it has the double damage onto its red, and it also has a little bit of skill reduction. Not excessively high amount, not as much as the other troop, but it still has a enough to still get it going and be viable in a first slot position. But overall, this is obviously only going to really be used as a red Guild War Defend, if ever, and that's pretty much it. It's never going to really be seen outside of that. However, it should still be a very viable option for that, so is worth considering obtaining. As far as various bonuses that we have throughout the week, we do have ourselves 10% to all Tauruses, as well as 10% to all War Gears, which does have a little bit of overlap. Not much, though, for the Kingdom. You also end up getting additional 400 gold for using this troop in PvP or in Explore. Probably worth considering using it more so in Explore for quick kill, especially given that this weekend will be a Vault event. So if you want to go get Cedric or just gain a bunch of resources or just farm up in general while gaining more loot, we do have a Vault event this weekend, so do keep an eye out for that. I'll be starting on Friday reset. Don't forget, any of your medals from last week will now become badges of season, so anything that you had from the previous World Lore event, of course, will always get converted into season. So whatever you had from last week, you'll be able to go and use, which we actually have our banner set to right now. And there we go. Of course, most main synergies that you tend to do with it is 20% mana start with 2 seasons, or simply 3 seasons. There's a few others that you could potentially go for, like with some amount of cleanse, but generally speaking, those are the 2 main ones that you would end up using seasons for if you have any seasons that you want to build into a build of sorts. As far as event keys this week, it is okay. All of the Gnoll troops, as I mentioned, are available. Gnolls are basically like a subsection of troops, kind of like how there's like a subsection of spiders almost, but Gnoll troops are all from the kingdom of Wild Plains, and they all have a very similar mechanic in that they have triple damage on their ability while having a double damage on their skull to the opposing color. So if we go over to Wild Plains, every single thing you see here is available in the event key drop table this week. The most noteworthy are the 5 Gnoll troops. These include Bullygnoll, which is anti-purple, Bullygnoll, which is anti-red, the Gnoll, which is anti-brown, where's the other ones? The Savage Hunter, which is anti-green, and the last one of Wild Fang, which is anti-yellow. And those 5 are the Gnoll troops. Obviously, we are still missing the color of blue, which will be coming in eventually, and will make Blue Day even worse. But yeah, the only color that we're missing as far as the Gnolls are blue. As far as the absolute best one of them, oddly enough, it's actually the rare. And the main reason for that is it gets enraged whenever it gets a kill. It has Hunter's Mark every single hit, and it still has its 2 times damage while still having a decent ability. So overall, it's really, really potent. And it's only rare, so it's a lot more accessible to get it maxed and everything compared to like these epic ones and stuff like that. So yeah, Savage Hunter, absolutely savage, to say the least, since every single one of its 3 traits are absolutely amazing, whereas most of the other ones only have 2 good traits, generally speaking. So pretty worth considering using on an anti-day. But yeah, those 5 are the main ones you'd want to go for in a event key drop table. They're mostly only used for Guild War Defends, though, if you even use them at all. However, if you are looking for something, Ketras a Bull. While he is the mythic, He is a very good troop and also very good for the event that we have going on this week. Is worth considering picking up. He's also one of few mythics that is worth having more than one copy of. So if you happen to ever get another copy randomly into the future, it won't be that big a deal since having a second one isn't that bad. But you can still get away with a lot of things only having the one. He has a really good boost ratio based on basically every stat in the game since he uses magic for his damage, and all the other stats also count towards his damage, so pretty much everything. Scouting his damage, magic at 1-1, and everything else at 2-1. So he can end up getting a lot of damage and then hitting second slot, fourth slot, and then winning out the battle. He's really bad against stealthy, but aside from that, it's pretty good overall damage source mythic that can upscale pretty much with any stat you want. Normally it's done with Yasmine's Pride, however, of course he theoretically has boost ratio to all 4, so he could be used in any kind of team composed of gaining those stats at a really high amount that upscales based on enemy stats. You don't necessarily need an upscale option, but if you're using him for obviously like higher level Tower of Doom or higher level Delves, you would end up needing it. But in a PvP situation, he actually, or Guild Wars, he often runs without even needing a buff. Not really much of a defend troop, but definitely offensively, you can end up using him for pretty good value, so definitely worth considering. As I mentioned, we do have we have Tower of Doom. It is of red color. We ended up getting a pretty decent weapon as well if you want to use it as a red Guild War kind of defend thing. I personally won't be upgrading it as we don't know what or if we're even going to be getting another category of Doom weapons, but if we do, I've kind of been holding out just in case the next one is going to be really worth upgrading. As it currently stands, the best Doom type of weapon to upgrade are the ones that do full AoE damage to all enemies and then convert to Doom Skulls. Any of these 6 for the colors are the best weapons to be using your scrolls on to go and upgrade. However, at this current moment in time, the second best are all of these hammer-like weapons that end up hitting a single target and then heavy splashing 75% of its damage to the 2 adjacents. It gains 40 additional damage from being fully upgraded, as well as 30 to the 2 adjacents for 100 total, which is a pretty substantial amount of damage. Not so much for upscaling, but in like a PvP situation, 100 damage is a lot of damage extra just for having it maxed. And then it also gets to stun all red enemies, which could potentially make it good for a red kind of Guild War day, and then cleanse all red allies, and many teams do run with multiple reds like that. And then it also gets to explode 4 gems, and very rarely it would also get 3 additional gem explodes if you happen to be up against a Doom. I wouldn't really use this weapon in Tower of Doom, it's more so a Guild War kind of weapon, but yeah, it would get 7 explosions in those instances if you were to do so. But yeah, this is the second best typing of Doom weapon. I've personally been holding off on upgrading these just in case. But if you are looking to upgrade a second type of weapon, this is the second type of weapon that you would want to do in the current state of the game. So worth considering. Anyways, actually, you know what? We might as well do a battle while we're here. So I've been using Tesla so far. I already scouted out to see which rooms we need to do. Here's a relatively cheap team. We'll be showing one even cheaper though. But Mountain Crusher, Tesla, and a what's this thing called? The Drowned Sailor, which is actually from the Sunken Fleet faction that we have going on today. Quite a few good, decent things from Sunken Fleet, oddly enough. That and Mirage Queen are the 2 big ones. Definitely worth considering if you still want to pick up stuff from there, because Sunken Fleet actually has some pretty good options. And this one, I believe you actually get for... Oh, no, this is the ultra rare. I was going to say you get it for free just from doing the event, pretty much. But no, that would be the epic. But anyways, we'll throw this down for now. Get a Tesla in. Unfortunately, you did get a mana drain there. If you don't have a second Tesla, one of your best options is probably to run Harpy Mage, I would say, just for the extra mana accumulation, and just keep your Tesla very safe and hope it doesn't die, and just use the single Tesla spam. But with double Tesla, it goes a little bit quicker, and just keep getting the split damages in. It scales the entire time, since she does have that boost ratio. And there we go, Valraven and a Haste, 3 sigils in 1 battle. Very nice. But there we go. And that's pretty much all you have to do. We'll show a few more teams in a moment. But first, of course, we got other things going on this week. Today we have a Sunken Fleet faction. This one ends up bringing in a lot of good troops. Obviously, you can open up for these troops at any point. But as I mentioned, we have the Drunken Sailor and Mirage Queen. Mirage Queen arguably being one of the absolute best stealth troops in the entire game, due to how meta elementals are, and it gives 50% elemental mana start. Only big issue with that is no hero class has 50%, or it doesn't have elemental typing yet. If it ever did, it would be amazing. A lot of really good mythics as of recently, particularly last year or so, have been coming in as elemental, which has increasingly been making elementals more and more viable. They were already pretty viable to begin with, but they just keep getting more and more viable. So that, combined with the fact that it has one of the best 4x curses and a green Doomskull convert, while also having skull reduction, makes it a pretty well-rounded troop for just about everything. So great option to consider getting if you haven't already gotten it. Anyways, other than that, this Wednesday we'll be getting the little Tauros troop thing. Nothing really too special there. For Thursday, we will be having Shaman Hero class. Shaman Hero class not used too often. However, the main viability of it is that it has 50% mana start for all Tauruses. And this is very, very good if you're doing like a red rush team for Red Guild War because of all the troops that we now have that counter on red that are Tauruses. You'll also have it for very good synergy with Ketras the Bull. Ketras the Bull has a pretty hefty 22 mana cost, but you can get him down all the way to 11 with a 50% start, and if you have enchant on top of that, you got his start all the way down to only a 9 mana cost, which for a mythic is pretty good. And then this Friday, as I mentioned, we'll be having a vault event. So if you've been looking to get more vault keys, try to get a Cedric off of them, or just trying to get more loot in general, this weekend will be a good time to do so. This weekend I am going to be going and farming until we have every single hero class at level 100. So we'll be streaming quite a bit this weekend to make sure we reach that goal. And hopefully get a bunch of vault keys along the way, because I still need Mecha Gnome because I haven't been opening vault keys, but all the ones I've been getting post 200 I have been. But anyways, Soulforge this week. So we only really have one particularly good thing, and that is Apophisis. Apophisis is the best stunner in the game, having 4 times stun on an extra turn. It also gets to have 50% scroll reduction, which occasionally makes it actually used in first slot. Oddly enough, even though it has scroll reduction, it can pretty much be used in any slot. It depends what you're using it for. If you're using him for scroll reduction, if you're using him just for a stun, really just depends. More often than not, if you're putting him in a team, the main reason you're doing so is obviously because of his stun. That's the main aspect that you would ever bother putting this in. His damage is really inconsistent, so he's generally not used as a damage option. There's better tanks out there in the game, so you don't tend to use him as a tank, but sometimes you have to, depending on your team composition, in order to put a stun in there. Is particularly noteworthy in Guild Wars. And yeah, it's basically just used for its stun. Stun is, of course, a very potent ability that gets rid of all their traits for the duration of the stun, so anything that keeps reoccurring will be completely disabled. So if the team has a lot of things, the enemy team has a lot of capabilities that are able to utilize that, it's a great way to counter that. One other thing to keep in mind, that this does apply to metals as well. As it currently stands, the only metal that can be stunned is Orpheus, which has that cleanse chance per turn, which is kind of ironic. But it is possible to stun the thing that gives the extra cleanse chance. However, currently no other metal that exists right now is stunnable, so do be mindful of that. However, if they ever do add another reoccurring metal into the future, this will be able to stun it, so definitely worth considering in case they ever do. Not to mention it's still decently viable. However, the only big issue with this mythic is, as I mentioned, it's pretty much Guild War only. There's quite a few mythics that are kind of Guild War only, but that is one of them, and for that reason, you might not want to consider it as a high priority, since the only thing it would help you with is Guild War, and pretty much nothing else. While there are things that you would go for that are like that, like Wild Queen, this doesn't necessarily actually increase your points. It just makes it so you can win a little bit more consistently. Aside from that, we do have Dragon Soul this week. So Dragon Soul, one of the best soul farming options in the entire game. Also, pretty much one of the only mythics, if not the only mythic, where I would say 100% of the time, if you do not currently own it, is worth going for. It gives a lot of soul gain, and when you don't have access to some of the other soul farming methods, and you want to boost to a better soul farming method than just spamming arena, this is a really great option for doing so. It ends up gaining 15 souls per cast. If you go to Explore 2, regardless of how many stats you have, the second you get this, you'll be able to 3-shot Explore 2, and you specifically want a 3-shot so that you get max soul capacity. And in doing so, you'll be able to get a lot of souls per hour. Most teams with them can do upwards of 30,000 souls per hour. And if you have fair Shraz, it can go even higher than that. So, yeah, you can get a lot of souls from this thing if you just keep spamming in Explore. And hey, we got a Gnome event this weekend, so perfect synergy for farming Gnome event while also trying to do some soul farming. So if you've been needing more souls, Dragon Soul is definitely a great option to consider. And for only 800 diamonds is definitely worth considering if you don't own any copies of him yet. Other than that, as far as weapons that we have this week, we have the Last Harbor. This is completely useless. This is only available today, though, so if you do want to pick this up, make sure to go do the faction event of Sunken Fleet and buy up to tier 3 for the weapon, or simply buy it from Soulforge. Do keep in mind you only have this Thursday. It is a completely useless weapon. However, this Tuesday, today. But do keep in mind it's only available today and won't be available for months upon months from now, so maybe worth considering. But it's only for collections purposes. If you actually want a good weapon, you probably want to go for Primal Axe. Primal Axe, at least at the current state of the game, is the most viable of the unique weapons that are available right now. It ends up creating a bunch of green and red based on wild plains. troops, so it ends up getting some really good mana synergy within the kingdom, as both green and red are very sought after, and works very, very good if you have something like Ketras the Bull as well, if you want to synergize it into that regard. Other than that, Rage Weaver, in the current state of the game, doesn't really have much of a synergy, but could have potential into the future, though I'd probably go for the other one, but this does have potential going forward. It deals splash damage to an enemy, which will do 50% to the 2 adjacents, and then creates 4 red gems, but is boosted based on every Tauros ally, and it is possible, since there is a Tauros hero class, of course, which is off of Shaman, it is possible that you could end up getting a 16 red gem spawn. The only problem with this weapon, obviously 16 red gem spawn is pretty good for only 15 mana costs, but the biggest issue here is that red mana doesn't have anything to feed into underneath the Tauros category that can feed it back very well with mana. There's nothing red underneath Tauroses that really mana generate that well, and for that reason, you can't really mana generate back into this. If we ever got a Tauros troop that could very viably feed either brown or blue back to this weapon could have a lot of potential, and a Tauros team with Shaman could even become slightly meta. As it currently stands, there is no troop that is viable enough to do this, but if there ever was to be one added, this could be good. However, it is likely to be added again, or if it ever does get added, it would likely be up until the next event, and for that reason, these would be available the following events whenever that does get added. So I'd probably just go for Primal Axe for now, just because this actually has some viability prior to then, and then if we ever do get a new troop that does make this viable, you can simply get it likely during the next time we have a Wild Plains event, which will probably be months upon months from now. But yep, that's the rundown as far as weapons. Oh, and of course we got Doomed Maul, but I would honestly only get it through 500 gems via the Doom event. It is much cheaper doing it that way, much more efficient, and I would not really bother doing in Soulforge. Though I do advise getting it before the end of this week, because if you don't end up getting it, it'll be a little bit more expensive, and you'd have to get it in Soulforge only if you don't end up picking it up. And since it is the second best category of weapon, you probably want to consider it and end up picking it up. Anyways, let's take our tribute, because we can't not take tribute, and then go over some teams. So tribute, nice, 11 gems. Add to our pile to go use for upcoming videos, though we don't have anything to go use them for this week. But anyways, over to PvP, and let's go show some teams. So we'll start with the Tower of Doom teams. So, Red Tower of Doom, hi. This is likely what I'll be using towards the later battles. Obviously a bit more expensive. Yasmine's Pride, double Ketras into Gimlet. You can also do this with Mountain Crusher earlier on in the battles. You can also end up switching out to Titan for safety. However, it is quicker with Shaman. Shaman, of course, gives 50% mana start to all the Tauruses off a final trait. Catches the Bull as Tauros, as I mentioned, and with the enchant and everything, you only end up needing 9 mana to fill these up. You then go use a Gimlet. This will ideally give you your mana. This converts all green to brown. Boom, you're good to go. And you just get a bunch of mana. You then keep throwing Catches the Bulls, throw the Yasmine for the HP gain. HP gain gives boost ratio and makes it so you don't die, and you just keep spamming Ketras until you win. And if you only have one Ketras, you'd likely go for another mana accumulation, just so you can keep spamming out your Yasmine plus Ketras. So it'd be pretty easy. You could go for something like Harpy Mage or something, since generally you only need like the very first Gimlet cast to kind of get things going, and then you can use Harpy Mage as the Brown Storm that will be able to synergize with all the Browns you already have on the board, and the fact that this is almost a brown team, even though it's obviously a red team. And of course, you're allowed to use any color weapon in Tower of Doom, regardless of color restriction, so we are allowed to get away with Mountain Crusher, Yasmine's Pride, or any other weapon that is not red. Other than that, for the next one, this is a bit of a Tesla team. It was the one that we were actually showing. Similarly, if you don't have a second Tesla, you can go for Harpy Mage again, and do the Mountain Crusher Harpy Mage combo, which is pretty good. That'll end up giving you a lot of mana accumulation, but basic premise of this is Tesla has boost ratio based on all armor within the battle. Obviously, the enemy will have a higher armor as you go forward, so it'll be able to boost ratio off of that for better value, and you basically just keep casting this until you end up winning. It does eventually take multiple casts, and she does become a little bit less viable at that point. However, most things would end up starting to take multiple casts by that point, so it's perfectly fine to run it. And we have Drowned Sailor here just simply for the yellow to blue convert. It also has a chance of that double Death Mark thing. However, this is very viably actually used and will very rarely get a kill, especially since the Doom has immune to it anyways, all the way in last slot if you're up against the Doom battle. So overall, you're mostly just using it for the convert and just spamming out your Teslas. As far as a super cheap option, pretty much anything centered around Mang will do you pretty good. What you specifically go for depends kind of on what you have. This one ended up going with Harpy Mage for the mana accumulation, which you get from opening portals in Stone Song Aerie. We also have Apophisis and Fist of Zorn here, which are random key drop ones. And basically, this is just a skull spam version of a Mang. So here we can can go and convert all greens to skulls as well as all yellow to skulls. What's beneficial about this is they both have it off of Empower, which is the whole reason why they're being used, even though they're pretty mana blocked. And this is mostly to get a lot of skull damage in after you have hit a Mang. So basically you'll do a Mang, you'll tear all of their armor to attack. This will be able to go into pretty decent kill range, and then you can use Enrage off a hero class. Make sure you set your Titan to Enrage, and then just go and skull spam off of Apophisis and Fist of Zorn. And if you need more Mang damage, you simply just go for the Harpy Mage in order to mana accumulate. If you really want to, you could even technically just go for another skull spam option and just really commit to the triple Empower skull. However, it's nice to have a little bit of mana accumulation. Sometimes you can get a really quick double Mang, and in those situations, like if you can first board a 5x brown red, throw a Mang, throw a Harpy Mage, get Mang again, and then you're going to be even easier to just skull spam through everything. And if you make sure you set Enrage, you'll have even better chance since you'll have the 1.5 times skull damage, while also being able to hit through traits that might end up negating it, like 50% skull reduction, and similar traits that would negate out your damage potential. So it ends up working out pretty decently. And yeah, pretty much just building anything around Mang is a good go-to move if you need something just super cheap to tear through everything. Other than that, Bullygnoll, I did end up showing building up 2 teams. We might end up building up a few more before Red Guild War actually gets around. Obviously, this will not be needed until Red Guild War Defend. And depending on what you have set as your defend, you might need to, go a specific way for the event. But anyways, for this, we have Bullygnoll, Glaycion, Jar of Eyes, and Gimlet. Gimlet here, once again, doing the green to brown convert so we can go get all of our mana accumulation. We have the Bullygnoll in first, of course, to be able to utilize its damage. You can use it further back, of course, for its cast. So do be mindful of that. You don't have to necessarily have it all the way at the front of your team. But of course it does get that really high red skull pressure. We have Glaycion here, so even if they entangle, we're still going to get some pretty good value because those Doom Skulls still do twice the amount of damage even through entangle. So if you hit like 4 Doom Skulls, you'll actually hit 40 damage still. That's a pretty hefty amount of damage since the normal 20 would go all the way up to 40 with the extra 2 times. So it has a bit of potential there, even if you are entangled, to still do pretty much normal skull damage. So ends up working out pretty nice in that regard. We have the anti-red, so this converts away red so that you don't need it. The only problem with this is red and blue are both really popular, and this does create blue, so you do have to be a little worrisome of that. However, that's not really done until late game because it does kind of require Zugoff to build a proper red-blue Guild War related team. And of course, a lot of people don't own Zugoff. Jar of Eyes is here for the mana accumulation. Ends up exploding all brown. It's kind of like a Mountain Crusher that has Summon, and that just covers different colors. It does give a blue Storm, which will hopefully allow you to get better synergy with the Glaycion alignment. And other than that, the Gimlet, of course, just to feed brown. But it also has the HP and Enrage attached to it, which obviously giving Enrage to this thing is pretty beneficial. Some of the other Gnolls have it attached to them. This one does not. However, you can give it with Gimlet. And of course, with Enrage, 1.5 times additional skull damage, which does stack with his other multipliers, as well as the mana accumulation that you end up getting. So overall, going to be pretty nice. And a little bit of life gains just so you don't die with his skull reduction. Other than that, this one ends up going with Ferocity. So Ferocity is a troop that is pretty viable with this new Gnoll. Basically what it has is the same 2 times damage, but it also has a better skull reduction. But the other really big thing that it has is it gives 4 to all stats to all Taurus' allies every single time you get an extra turn. This does not count ability extra turn, so for example, you just casting something like Rope Dart will not count for the extra turn. However, for something like a Thrall with its constant board clears, if you end up heading an extra turn from that cascade or just at any point during the battle, that will be 4 to pretty much everything. If you're using Shaman, the only thing that wouldn't end up getting it is the Thrall in this particular team, and this is relatively cheap. You can replace out Rope Dart if you really need to. But aside from that, this is pretty much just all common. This is a glory troop that you can very easily get automatically this week. Ferocity is just a common off the guild keys. Thrall is just a common off of gold keys. And then you just go simply a hero weapon. Or if you really want to, you could consider going for like another Taurus troop. Oh, then again, never mind. You wouldn't go another Taurus. You kind of have to use Shaman. So you would have to go the weapon option. But yeah, you definitely would need the weapon because 50% Taurus start is the main thing that puts this together. So with the Bullygnoll only requiring a 6 mana cost, and then Ferocity also only requiring 6 mana cost, they both have an ability that hits red harder than you would normally be able to hit them for. So if either one of those get the cast, they'll have a really, really good chance of nearly one-shotting, especially with the fact that every single time you get a extra turn, you're going to be gaining 4 additional magic to their ability. And in the case of something like a Bullygnoll, 4 magic means 12 additional damage. That will substantially increase the amount of damage that you'll be able to potentially do on your defend team in order to kill it out. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Red Guild War pans out, because we're gonna probably see a lot of Bullygnoll plus Ferocity on into the next Guild War. So we'll see how exactly it pans out. But do be wary of that, especially offensively on next Red Guild War, because it's probably going to be harder than it has been in the past. And Red Guild War Day has already been a kind of hard day overall. Pretty sure Blue Day is still slightly more difficult, but Red Day is one of the more notorious kind of hard days, just because there's a lot of skull spam, even more so now with these Bullygnoll troops. Red is really popular for kind of skull spamming out the enemy, because Red doesn't have as many options that are skull resistant. So do be very careful around next Red Guild War Day. Anyways, for the Delve event, we have Blue and Red. So you could literally run any team that you used for Tower of Doom this week for the faction event today. So if you want to do that, well, you can be your red team if you really want to. And of course, I figured just show the Farce Troll King Gobtruffle team. Obviously, this is a classic that always fun and just easy to use for. But yeah, literally anything you use for Tower of Doom, if you really want to, you can just use it for the faction today. So yeah, you can literally just copy paste the team that you use for that if you truly want to, and just use that instead. Obviously, pure faction you can't do that for, though. As far as pure faction, there's a couple different ways to go about it. The specific one I'm showing here is Mirage Queen into Double Water Elemental into Drowned Sailor. Assuming you're doing it today, you're obviously going to have a lot of potion effects, and with those potion effects, you'll be able to get really good value from the Water Elemental. It'll have a full AoE, probably around like 80 damage, if not higher, maybe even over 100, depending on your stats, how many potions, and how upgraded you have the faction. But you can get a lot of value out of this, since if you're hitting for, let's say, about 100 every single cast, well, they're going to die pretty quickly. You also get additional mana from itself for the additional blue. Main way that you play this is you pretty much don't cast Mirage Queen. You simply go and use it as a frontline tank with its 33% reduction, which partially stacks with the 25% reduction that you'll get from the potions. You have 50% Elemental start, which gives these two half mana start. You have a Drowned King, or Drowned Sailor, I mean, which ends up giving the blue conversion, and then you end up feeding into these two, and then just don't cast your Mirage Queen until you absolutely have to, especially since it could backfire and you don't want your Mirage Queen dying until the final battle, if even at all. And then you just keep spamming Water Elementals. And that's the whole premise. You just keep chipping them down with really big full AoEs. Obviously, this is pretty low damage, but with potions and everything else, he'll be hitting pretty hard. And with the extra blue mana, it'll be even easier to go and do that. And you can also two-turn it pretty easily in combination with Banner. So overall, should be pretty straightforward of a faction to do. Shouldn't be that hard overall. Since you have a good frontline tank. The only thing that you're really missing, though, is Summon. Biggest thing that could end up happening is you lose Mirage Queen too early, and then it just kind of plows through your entire team. But as long as you have Mirage Queen going into final battle, it should pretty much be an easy final battle. The hardest part is getting Mirage Queen to the final battle, especially since this faction isn't like a 3-room. You do have, I believe, 4 total? 4 or 5 that you have to go through. So it is a little bit harder to get there, but overall, should be easy if you're just going to get the Mirage Queen to the final battle and just go from there. Anyway, Shaman Hero Class. This is the event that we have going on for Thursday. Shaman Hero Class is decent. Not the best hero class in the game, but by no means a bad hero class. Has 50% mana start to Tauruses, which is the main reason you ever really bring it out for the most part. However, it does have some pretty good synergies with the red troops, as I mentioned, as well as Ketras. But it's okay. It's definitely a decent hero class, but not one. It's really situational that you only really bring out for its mana start. But nonetheless, if you want to go kill these out, you will be restricted specifically to Tauruses from Wild Plains. And for that, you can simply run Black Manacles into Triple Soothsayer, and that will end up killing it out pretty easily if you're just doing the free battles. And you just keep spamming Black Manacles until you win. And that's pretty much all you have to do. I did show this with Titan here just because Titan does have barrier on brown, and you're going to be taking a lot of brown. It's even more beneficial given that Soothsayer has additional brown through its Stone Link, so you'll be able to get a lot of mana that way. But anyways, guys, that will pretty much wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. We'll be streaming Tower of Doom every single night this week until we get it done at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, this week I am making it my goal to go and max out every single hero class in the game. I still have 3 left. And this weekend we will be farming a lot of Vault Event, and we won't be stopping until we get all of them max, at least by the end of Sunday. Obviously, we'll be splitting it up between the 3 days. But yeah, we'll be streaming a lot this weekend trying to go and farm that up. And hopefully by the end of it all, we'll leave with a Mechanome, a bunch more loot that we can go use for stuff, as well as every hero class finally fully maxed. So that is the game plan. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe out there, and I will catch you guys soon. Goodbye, everyone.